This week, as part of the EdTech Podcast launch party, drink sponsors ELTjam are offering 3 free half-day workshops to help you improve the experience that you're providing your learners or clients. The ELTjam team will work with you to prepare an agenda which matches your needs and facilitate an engaging and results-focused workshop. So you can organise these as you wish to get the most out of them, but some examples to get you thinking around those ideas are problem to product, so clarify the problem and work together to find an appropriate solution. Learner experience design, so look at your product through our learner experience lens. And MVP development, so identify your riskiest assumptions and how best to test them. If you're interested, please email joe@eltjam.com to put your name in the hat. And for more information on who ELTjam are, what they do and how they can help, visit www.eltjam.com/welcome.
Hi, I'm Courtney, Rowan, and welcome to the EdTech Podcast.
Hello, I'm Stephan Caspar, and this is the EdTech Podcast.
Hi, I'm Clarissa, Chay. Welcome to the EdTech Podcast.
And welcome to the EdTech Podcast. This week we're in conversation with the University of Southampton in the UK. First up, the University iChamps, led by Fiona Harvey, Chair of the Alternative Learning Trust and Education Development Manager at the Institute for Learning Innovation and Development at the University of Southampton. The iChamps are students at the university who learn new skills and tools which help staff to deliver teaching and learning in more engaging ways, whilst improving their own digital literacy. I'm in conversation with third-year chemistry students Courtney, Rowan and Clarissa Chay, who talk about the challenges, opportunities and experiences of the programme. A big shout out to Fiona for helping to set up the interview, which we finally got done third time lucky after an SD card and firewall fail. Next up, Stephan Caspar, Media Development Lead from the Institute for Learning Innovation and Development, again at the University of Southampton. I have a really interesting chat to Stephan about what breeds an appetite for innovation, and we compare ingenuity across the FE and HE sectors. We also investigate some top tools for academics and researchers and look at the broader context of sharing the value of work in a post-Brexit age. This interview was recorded at the University of Southampton's podcasting event. A big shout out to Stephan for inviting me to speak, and post the resources for anyone thinking of podcasting in the show notes. And finally, I'm very excited about the EdTech Podcast launch party next week and welcoming you all those that can attend, should I say. We have attendees from schools, FE, HE, government, investors, startups, blue chips, publishers, museums and media. This week, a big hello to our new drink sponsor, SowingX Capital, who are helping with investment in early-stage dynamic UK edtech companies looking to expand their business globally, especially into China or the East Asian market. If you're an edtech startup listening and interested in finding out what this means for you, please contact Billy at indexld005@gmail.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And I've also had a first few questions for the EdTech Podcast live panel via Twitter using hashtag EdTechPod, so keep sending those in. And finally, you can download the guide via Guidebook app, search the EdTech Podcast launch party, hashtag EdTechPod as the password. And for everyone else, I hope to bring the EdTech Podcast live to a town near you in 2017. It's all good. I'm just pleased that I can actually hear you, because last time it was so ridiculous. Because you guys, I could tell you're obviously like cracking up because it was so ludicrous, and then I was just getting really irate with this bloody thing that wasn't working. So anyway, we got there in the end. Brilliant. So absolutely delighted to finally have connected successfully with Courtney, Rowan and Clarissa Chay. So Courtney and Clarissa are known as iChamps at the University of Southampton, and if I remember correctly, you're both studying chemistry.
Yes.
And as I understand it, iChamps is this amazing initiative at the University of Southampton which takes on board new students from any different discipline within the university and essentially upskills them in new digital skills and then aligns them with academics looking to employ those skills to deliver their teaching, learning and academic research to best effect. So I think this initiative's amazingly exciting on a number of different levels in the sense that it's getting academics and students working together in a different way. It's enabling students with these amazing digital literacy skills and it's just something that I was really interested in as soon as I heard about it. So Courtney and Clarissa, just to give a bit of backstory to our listeners. So this, for those that know John Peel, was in the theme of all good broadcasters quite a marathon to get this recording done. So first of all, the SD card ran out after we did this amazing recording at the podcasting events. That was quite ironic given the subject matter. And then we tried to use another remote platform which didn't work, and we think perhaps that was a firewall issue. And now finally good old Skype and a bit of cool recorder technology means that we're finally talking. So welcome to the EdTech Podcast.
Yay! Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So first question, perhaps you could give your own description about the iChamps program and a little bit of history about how you both came to be involved in that.
Yeah, sure. So I think we both took quite different paths to getting there. So I saw the iChamps vacancy advertised as a summer internship, so I applied that way. I think it was the first time that they actually advertised it that way. Normally the academics would choose a student who they thought was particularly special and they'd like to work with. Courtney, your one was...
Yeah, I went for it differently. I remember messaging my personal tutor, because you get assigned a personal tutor at university, saying I was looking for a job over summer. I didn't want to just do like regular bar work. I wanted to do something related to my degree. And then he pointed me in the direction of the iChamps scheme and just took it from there, really. We had interviews and it was all really scary, but we both got on, so that was really nice.
Yeah, I remember last time we spoke, you were saying how the interview process was quite rigorous, and you started off kind of like questioning what's this thing all about, and by the end you were really into being on it, so you were really delighted when you finally got on.
Yeah, all the words, I think it was the big words, like our role is the Innovations in Digital Literacy Champion, and at first I was thinking they're not words I come across usually as a student.
I remember thinking the same, and then when you had like the job description and it just said you were just introducing technology to chemistry, and obviously that's very vast.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking we both just didn't know what our first project would be about, and then obviously you got briefed on the project and it made a lot more sense.
And at the end of the interview you're like, oh my god, I want this so much.
Yeah, you realised you wanted it so much at the end of the interview.
And I think that's a really good life lesson as well. So lots of applications that you'll come across after this will use those big words and sound incredibly intimidating, but when you break it down, it's usually not as complex as perhaps it first sounds.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And so can you kind of give us some examples of some of the projects that you've taken on and the application, so both the tools that you've learnt to use and how you've then applied those, or academics that have really benefited from them as well?
We've worked on 2 projects so far, both like quite big projects, both really different. Behind the projects, I think we started off went straight into our first project, and we also had training with Fiona, and Fiona taught us like a different side of it. So she'd teach us all of the digital literacy skills. So like documenting what we'd been doing on Pathbright, displaying it, making our image online, like keeping up a professional image and a consistent one on lots of different platforms. And I think just getting us out there. So that was what I feel like our main focus was with Fiona's side of it.
Yep.
Then when we were working on the project with Tom, do you want to explain a bit?
Yeah, like for our first project, it was called LabDog, and it was basically bringing this sort of interactive learning platform for the foundation year students at chemistry, so that they could use it in the lab. So instead of just reading the lab script and doing what it said, as if just following like a recipe and not thinking about what you're doing, it made you stop, answer questions, like think about what you were doing. So it was like a more engaging platform for the students to sort of bounce off and learn from.
So encouraging less passive learning and
and like, I think thinking what you're doing as you're going along as well, rather than just getting through it, just following instructions. You have to actually think about the theory behind what you're doing.
I suppose what's great about the project is it puts you in situations that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise find yourself in. So that might be working with various members of staff or in disciplines outside of chemistry and that kind of thing. You know, we've all had bad experiences of tech. Do you ever get any resistance in terms of actually using some of those technologies, and how do you go about perhaps bringing people round to the idea that, you know, once the time's invested, it is really worth it?
I think our longest meeting that we had was an hour and a half, trying to show an academic the benefits of a program that we were going to be using.
Yeah.
Because I think another thing as well is that if they've used similar apps or similar software beforehand and it's maybe gone wrong, they're less likely to want to jump straight into something else. Even if we show them how good it can be, they've seen all these problems firsthand and they've had a bad experience, so they're less willing to try something new.
I think as well, like when you said like how do you sort of like overcome the problem, I think Clarissa and I found that if we've been using a technology, like it, rather than just talking to people about the technology, it's like 10 times better to show them the technology and show them how it can work firsthand. I mean, with our current project Nearpod, we've introduced it this week with the lecturers, and we've encountered a couple of problems, and like not everyone's taken to it just because it's with the Wi-Fi system and it's been a little bit hit and miss. But we had one lecturer and he's dedicated a lot of time putting in stuff, and it worked really well for him, and it's gone really well. So it does show that if you put in a little bit of effort, it can really pay off like a long way, especially for the students.
Yeah, I think the students, they did a poll at the end of this particular lecture, and 75% said that they liked using this new app.
Okay, cool. And what does that particular app do? Because I remember last time that when I asked you what was your favourite tool that you've come across, you were quite excited about that one.
Yeah, I think Nearpod and Pathbright are the biggest tool for us.
I think so. Nearpod is basically like you're engaging. Like if you're giving a lecture, you can give that lecture through the use of a smartphone, an iPad, or a tablet, or a laptop, anything with a web browser. But it does have an app anyway, and it just allows you to like ask the students questions. You can get them to draw things, and it just allows you to do so much more in a lecture rather than just being talked to for 45 minutes. So it's a lot more interactive and engaging again for the students. I think that's basically the purpose of iChamps, just make things more engaging for students.
And do you know, in terms of iChamps, are you aware of any other universities that do something similar?
Yeah, so there's been other students at conferences that we've been to, because that's something else that we do quite regularly. We just attend and speak about our work as iChamps, and there was a student panel at the GISC conference.
Okay.
There were students from up and down the country, but I think although they do similar things, it's still quite different from what we do. Because I think
I'd say the student panel was like student staff partnerships based, and it was digital skills, but not everyone worked in the same way. Like I think we're one of the only programs to document what we're doing through Pathbright, like a portfolio system, and have digital badges as well. I don't think many of them do that, evidence their skills, but they do the similar things.
I think another big thing is that we're treated equally as well with the staff that we work with. So we get a lot of respect from them, and they really listen to our ideas and encourage us to run with them.
Well, I mean, I think we talked about this last time about your experience with working with Fiona.
Yeah, Fiona is like a mentor, is just amazing, because she does just like, you know, embrace every idea we have, and like she's great.
High energy, which is good. Okay, and then do you know, I don't know if you know this, but any alumni that have been on the iChamps programme, do you know which particular professions or the sort of pathways they've taken after university?
It's a new thing.
I think it was introduced, I think Fiona told us 3 years ago.
Okay.
We've only had one person.
So Rebecca's left.
Yeah, we've only had one person who was the original iChamp leave, and she's now doing a master's or like a PhD, I think, at a different university.
So there aren't really any iChamps that have gone on to work yet. We're still babies.
And how about both of your own particular aspirations? Do you think you'll go into something that uses these digital skills? Have you got any idea exactly what you'd like to do yet, in case anyone's listening in?
So I think like our digital skills that we've learned have already been so applicable even before we've gone on to an actual job. Just applying for our placements next year.
Yeah.
The amount of things that I've mentioned in my CV to do with our job, and also our Pathbright portfolios give a direct representation. It's all visual, so they can see straight away all of our work that we've done. So even just representing ourselves to get a job, I feel like
we've honed that.
It's helped so much what we've done. Also, we've both, because we've talked in front of people at conferences, I think 200 people was the biggest audience that we spoke to. We've got like more comfortable doing it. So we spoke to some freshers last week, the whole year group, and we didn't even really think
even
about
bat an eyelid.
Yeah,
it was just like second nature.
Whereas our first talk, we were so nervous. We just got so much more used to it, and that's something that we've learnt without meaning to.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's a great skill to have.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing I was going to ask is whether you have anyone either among your peer group or your parents that are sort of anti-tech or anti-digital that don't really get it, or whether that's just like totally normal now.
I think people are adapting to it. So if it was like 10 years ago, then obviously there'd be a lot more people that were anti-tech. But I think the people that were originally like that have had to come to accept it.
Yeah, I think technology now is just so readily available, and it's become so integrated within our society that it's hard to ignore it. It's hard not to be a part of it.
You can't really avoid it.
Yeah, it's quite hard. Like, I know my dad doesn't have Facebook, but but he has to use Excel and other things in computers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's always that awkward thing when family members get on Facebook as well, because you have to decide whether you're going to befriend them or not.
Always the tough question.
I think I kept my mum blocked for a while.
Yeah, I think I've only just released, allowing my uncle to be my friend, which after about 10 years or something. And in terms of you two, what's next? So after, say, like the next 6 months, both in terms of, your own degrees, and then also in terms of iChamps, have you got any big projects coming up?
So our Nearpod project is still so new. Like, we'd only just started it when we first spoke to you. So a couple of months in, we've done all the training with staff. So now we're just watching it roll out and seeing any problems that might pop up. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that and getting feedback from the student and staff. But in terms of chemistry, we've just started our project, so we're going to be pretty busy. Yeah,
we've got in third year you can choose between a research project or an advanced practical, and Clarissa and I both were on the research project, so we're actually working on stuff that's never really been done before, which is really exciting. And I think in terms of like the next year, like we've both gone for the 6 month. You're on the 6 month placement.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we get to maybe go abroad or go in industry. So I think the next 2 years are going to be so exciting but so busy for us.
And we also want to roll out the digital badges for everyone at uni. So we want to have ones that they can do as something extra for themselves. So we're going to be spreading awareness of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like our next project that we'd like to do, is that obviously a lot of people at university do lots of different things, like whether it be sport, whether it be like volunteering for like a charity.
Yep.
And things. We're looking at trying to give a way that they can evidence that they've done this. Then when they go and say, well, I volunteered and I did all these great things, then they can actually show that, their employer or, an interview or something like that. So I think, that would be the next step, hopefully.
Are you able to describe what it is exactly in your research for your chemistry? Which area are you looking at?
I think we have to be relatively confidential.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I'm looking at synthesizing silver nanoparticles. So
wow.
Oh, lucky you.
That's that's incredible. And that's quite a growth area, isn't it? Nanotech, that kind of area.
Yeah. So then I'm moving on to using the nanoparticles with DNA and lots of different ways to use that.
I'm sort of working in the field that it just won the Nobel Prize actually on Wednesday. So it's like molecular machines and macrocycles. I think I can say that much.
Okay, well, I will look both of those areas up, and I will include all the links in the show notes for those that aren't so closely related to them. And for those that want to follow you as well, do you want to give away your Twitter handles?
Yeah, sure.
For all job offers and other...
Yeah.
Or gifts of it.
Yeah.
Probably of the sweet kind. My Twitter handle is @Courtney J Rowan.
Mine's _Clarissa Chay.
Perfect. And how about the iChamps? Are you on Twitter as iChamps as well?
Yes, we are.
The iChamps handle is @iChampsS.
Okay, well, it's absolutely brilliant. I'm so pleased that we got to reconnect. And best of luck with all of your studies and all other activities. And no doubt our paths will cross again.
Yay! Thank you, Sophie.
Take care. Have a good weekend, both.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
A quick break in proceedings to bring you news from ClearlySo, our partners again for the EdTech Podcast launch party. ClearlySo is Europe's leading impact investment bank, working exclusively with businesses and funds delivering positive social, ethical and/or environmental impact along with financial return. ClearlySo supports capital raising activity through financial advisory work. Originally founded in 2008, ClearlySo has helped more than 100 clients raise more than £100 million in impact investment from its extensive network of high net worth individual and institutional investors. You can follow them at ClearlySo and contact John Lloyd, john.lloyd@clearlyso.com for more information. So I'm here with Stephan Caspar. Stephan, would you like to say what your role is here at the University of Southampton?
Yes, at the University of Southampton I'm the media development person. So I work with a central unit that looks after teaching and learning and professional development, and I have the sort of media bit. So if you have an idea, a theory or a concept and you want to create some resource around that might be a film, a video, goodness knows, a podcast, something like that, then I've got a team of animators and video people, people who do data visualizations, some medical imaging as well, and we'll help you to create something that you can put on your course or VLE or wherever you want to, really.
So that's a brilliant introduction. Why I'm really excited is because, Stephan, if I understand it correctly, so you were listening to the EdTech podcast.
Yes.
And then you thought about this idea of hosting an event on podcasting for academic ends, I suppose, and got in contact. So tomorrow there's, what's the title? So
it's a podcasting micro conference, and I think I was hedging my bets, really. I called it a micro conference because I didn't think anybody would turn up. I'll be really honest with you. And now it's sold out, and that we had, we've got about 150 people on the list. We hope at least more than half of those people turn up, and it's the interest and appeal has been really fantastic, and lots of people have been in touch and said that they'd like to join us for the day. I've been speaking to lots of wonderful people like yourself who come along and talk, and it's really sort of opened the lid on the sort of potential of podcasting at Southampton, which we do a little bit, but we could do a lot more.
So I'm just really, really excited as well, because in a minute we're going to have a meal, and that's going to be, some of the people that are speaking tomorrow, people like Joe Dale, who was on the EdTech podcast, modern foreign language expert, and people like Martin Ostwick, who is the producer of Answer Me This, but also I think a social scientist.
He does a podcast called Sociable Physics, which is great, and he's a musician, does all the music for all the podcasts as well.
He does a Tom Waits podcast as well, doesn't he?
Oh, I haven't listened to that one.
Yeah,
I
think he's got like 3 or 4, and involve a whole raft of other ones. And then there's Kelly Long as well, so Innovate for Teachers, which people might be familiar with. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've not been to anything like this before. I mean, are you familiar? Do you know if other universities have hosted things like this?
Gosh, I don't know. I'll tell you how it kind of came about for us is that one of the things that I run is a sort of media special interest group. So we try and every year do some sort of event around something that might interest people, or a particular piece of media or a tool or a bit of software. So we've done things using around interactive media, people creating their own sort of animation or data visualization, and then sort of podcasts came up and again and again, and I'm guilty for starting lots of things and not finishing them, really, and podcast is one of the things, and I'm a very fair weather podcaster, and I thought, well, gosh, if I have a podcasting conference, if I really get a big intensive moment around that, then we could really get a lot of people doing this. And there's already a little community of people doing podcasts, and we have a very dormant iTunes U site, and there are things, and there's some really fantastic content. I mean, I've been at Southampton for about 2.5 years, and there's no shortage of people with absolutely amazing stories to tell. Yep. I just think podcasts is a way to do that in a way that is meaningful and engaging.
Yeah, I think it's slightly more natural perhaps than, if you invest in setting up a camera, getting the lighting right, it sometimes can feel like, you have to present the story in a certain way, whereas I think the beauty of the podcasting medium can be that a conversation sort of meanders and those interesting parts come out. Not necessarily, perhaps you didn't even know that was going to happen, but it just comes about in that way. So, I mean, I know you've had a really interesting background prior to Southampton. So perhaps can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to this role and your experiences previously in further education? I think the BBC.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I've like everybody these days, it's a roundabout route, and you have many careers, don't you? But I trained originally as a filmmaker. And then I worked on feature films, lots of very bad lottery-funded films for a long time. And then I started to do my own thing and create content, as it were. And sort of the advent of the web, more and more content was, I went to the BBC, where I think you had very defined roles. You could be you're a producer, camera operator, sound recordist, and more they were looking for a person who could do all of those things, could write and then go and grab the camera off the shelf and go and interview somebody. So the platform started to change. It weren't always about broadcast. They started to be more about the web, but also you had to create something that could also be used in radio. You could be used in a tiny snippet, could be used in a little report, or something could lead to a longer feature. So I was really interested in that, and I started working for a few different people at the BBC, including Informal Learning as well, and I had a little spell there, and that really got the kind of the education side of me going. And I'm also from a kind of long line of teachers in my family, so I suppose that's always been there in the background. And I was still living on the south coast, and I was going up to London every day, and I worked in Marylebone High Street, which is a lovely place to work, but awful on your wallet when you go for lunch. And then I had a little family, and I was travelling up to London still, and the local college wanted a media person one day a week, and I thought, I could probably do that sort of one afternoon, and then I could be home. And one afternoon turned into kind of a day and 2 days, and then they made me head of department, and so that was the step really from broadcasting into education. I'm
guessing the people in Marylebone were suddenly like, where's Stephan gone? And,
a little bit, and I think you're a staffer, and then you're a freelancer, and you jump on and off all the time, and project by project. But I was really lucky; I got involved with some really super projects at the BBC, and that was still going on whilst I was doing my teacher training, and I was really able to kind of bring all that together. So after doing that for about sort of 6 or 7 years, I've come here, and I'm really lucky where that this is a job that combines the two. It has the education side and the broadcast side. So I think I'm very lucky.
And how do you think innovation differs between, say, BBC, further education sector and higher education sector?
Gosh, they're all. I mean, I really thought that, and I've found that the BBC and HE have been very similar, or Southampton. I mean, my experience isn't vast, but I think their change happens very slowly. There's lots and lots of people involved. These are big organisations. In FE, it's much more agile, and also it's really. I mean, it was just always felt like it was being squeezed so much, and there's a resourcefulness that people have when that starts to happen that I don't find elsewhere. And in many ways, I've found the most innovative teachers have been the ones in FE. I can hear lots of people on your podcast screaming at the podcast at the moment. But
no, I mean, I think they're probably. Certainly the FE sector will be glad to hear someone sort of championing them, because I think they have a rough ride as well at the time. So
I should say it's funny that the people that I've met at HE, who are real go-getters, people like Fiona Harvey and that, they're also from an FE background, and you just learn to travel at speed. And then when you arrive in HE, it's a little bit
slower.
I
was going to ask about that. I mean, the way you described your department in terms of someone can come to you and basically they can leave with a data visualization, an infographic, or an animation, or that sounds like an absolute dream in terms of being able to put a concept and then repurpose it in different forms which carry ideas very quickly and with impact. So how much of the University of Southampton, how many make use of that department, do you think? And how, if other people are listening that do something similar, have you got any tips in terms of engaging people in new mediums of delivering ideas?
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's lots of ways to answer that. We are there and we serve a function, and lots of people come to us, and there's no shortage in demand, absolutely. But part of the reason that I'm there is, I suppose, that I have an agenda around teaching and learning. So many people phone me up and they say, Stephan, I'd like a video. And then we have a conversation about things like learning aims and the pedagogy, really. And what I send them away with actually is a group activity around some flip chart paper, and that's actually what's needed for the teaching. And so part of this engagement is around making the teaching and learning at Southampton better. And that's the important part of it, where learning design is a huge part of our process. Yeah. And we've got a big remit to ensure that teaching and learning, it has the same status that research has.
And when you're making that decision around what format that learning process should take, what training informed that? Was that your teacher training at the FE side of things? And are there any particular sort of ideologies or pedagogical theories that you love to go back to in that way?
I am. I'm an old constructivist, I think, and I really want people not to just create content and be consumers of content, but I want them to create content as well. So it happens that there's sort of two ends of this. So with my team, we can help you develop your materials, and we can create some really cracking video, and we can, sometimes we go out on field trips with people and we really capture as much as we can. And at the other end of this, I run workshops where I'm trying to get people to get these mobile phones out of their pockets and use them and create content that way. And that content could be, audio just as much as video or just photographs. And I want students to be reflective practitioners. I want them to create content as part of the evidence that they're submitting. And in the end, I suppose what I'm trying to do is get away from 12 lectures and an exam and turn it into something a bit more interesting.
And do you think at the moment, would it be fair to say that there's a sort of slight disconnect between perhaps the staff and the students, in that sense of that ease with which to create content, to basically dispose of it in terms of creating it, getting it out there over and over again?
Yeah, I think that's it's really hard. It could be about time constraints and things like that. Online learning and distance learning is, and even if you're sort of blended learning, if you're creating content around that, it takes some time. You have to dedicate your summer to doing that. I mean, you reap the benefits in the future, but you have to really get stuck in, and that's sometimes quite a hard sell, I think, and perhaps students coming from FE have an expectation around a certain way that they're going to be taught. They want to see more interactive content. They want to be part of the learning. In many cases, they want to be actually co-creators as well. And I think that's good for us. That's the driver for getting change as well at HE in terms of education.
And are there any particular tools that you get very excited about? So we've spoken about podcasting, but I mean, are there any things that you, at the moment, either yourself or within the group that you mentioned?
Yeah, there's lots of things. We love blogs, and we love people using just really simple tools like WordPress. So we have a VLE, and people use that, but we want platforms that are a lot more agile in that way. And something that I'm talking about a lot at the moment is a thing called H5P, which is really good fun. So we thought of it a bit like Articulate Storyline, something that you could create multimedia with, and it's a bit of an open source kit that comes from Norway, and lots of people have started using it, and we went to Alt and presented around it, and it's a really simple kit to create anything from sort of quizzes to interactive video, branching narratives, and I've seen it used in really sophisticated ways, and we're starting to spread the word. So who knows? The next conference might be about that.
Okay, interesting. And I even loved, so even when you were sort of delivering all the assets around this event that's happening tomorrow, I love is it guidebook, the app? Yeah, so that's fantastic, just in terms of creating a quick community, or, there's so many platforms like that perhaps are usually paid for previously, but I mean, in terms of a small event that a community is putting on, it's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part. So when we're creating these resources and we're talking to people about what they're doing, the learning design is a key part of it, and then learning technologies as well. So our learning designers will not only talk around the pedagogy of your course and trying to create a better rhythm and a greater kind of, I don't know, more active sort of base around what's actually happening, but they've also got a suite of tools at their disposal that they can say, have you tried this? I'm a big fan of ThingLink at the moment, and the way you can create interactive pictures and things like that. So you might somebody has a lot of nice tricks up their sleeve that they can talk to.
I mean,
about.
Any more of those, then shout them out, because what we'll do is include them in all the show notes and that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, you also mentioned previously some of the innovators that had come from FE. Are there any particular people that you really rate that are doing sort of similar things or being quite progressive in that way, either universities or individuals? Or
it's hard. I'm really trying to find innovative practice within HE, and there's really fantastic sort of pools of it and pockets of it. I think it's much more consistent in FE and lots of the places that I visited. And I was an external examiner for art and design for a little bit as well, so it was great. So I got to go and see what people were doing in other colleges.
Yeah.
And I think, there is a real consistency in terms of innovation. People are really pushing the boundaries, and I think heads really needed, because that's what makes the difference these days. And in HE, probably the same drivers aren't quite there, so it's really around people's own passions for their subjects, and those people start to see the possibilities and they start to use technology in a really interesting way, and then they start to create courses that are of themselves really active, really engaging, and that get really good responses from their students. But there's not a big movement to do that. Do
you know a lot of educators within Southampton, say, who are on Twitter? So a lot of the lecturers on Twitter and that kind of thing. So that's quite active and normal now.
Yes. We're using Twitter. Lots of people are using Slack as well, starting to do things like that. Yeah. I mean, it's a really big university, and
it's like talking about the States.
It's it has around what was it? About 9,000 staff, and they're dotted around all over the place. In fact, all over the world, and they're on field trips in South America and Southeast Asia and a bit everywhere. So it's hard to connect everybody. Definitely.
And are there any good kind of hashtags or Twitter chats in terms of? I mean, I used to use ELTjam chat quite a lot. Are there any other ones of those?
I wish. That's my favourite. In fact, I only recently earned my little badge from Christian Aranzi. I was chuffed.
Really? Yeah. I need to get a badge. Because it doesn't always have to be complicated, does it? Because I've always been a big fan of the LSE public lectures, and they podcast those. And to be honest, it's not hugely complicated. Obviously, they bring in really interesting speakers. They deliver quite traditional lecture format, but I don't know. And then that's podcasted, but it's not. Yeah,
it's really hard, because I am trying to push it a little bit, because we have lesson capture. So every lesson every room you can go in, you can press a button and we'll capture your talk. But it has to be more than that. And many of the videos that we first started making were people talking about their subject within a lecture hall, and we just needed to try and get people out of those situations. Show rather than just tell. So go into the lab or go on the field trip or take us to the place where that you can talk about this particular thing. And that's starting to happen a bit more, and I want that to happen as well around audio. And I think that's one of the reasons of having the event tomorrow. I want people to not just talk, but to create pictures and to have something more layered and something more richer. Lesson capture is the number one thing that students ask for, but unfortunately the numbers aren't still great. People don't watch them, so the demand is there, and there's an expectation that they're watching all of those lectures, but in fact, I mean, when I see the stats, they're very, very low. So we're competing against so much, I imagine. So I use channels like YouTube. I try to put things on iTunes U. We need really compelling content, just in the same way that any other broadcaster was. I don't see it as any different. I don't see the work that I'm doing here any different to a programme that I would be making at the BBC.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so what would be the key success criteria of making a programme on the BBC, and if you relate that back to I think it's the same. Yeah, it's interesting because in the BBC it's all about those viewing figures, but in HE I really want it to be around the conversations that come out of that, and we have the channels now whereby somebody can view or listen to content, but then they can be part of a conversation. They can start to come back, and those conversations can be ongoing, and I think that's the real test. It's going to be really hard with TEF around measuring engagement, and one metric that I know they're looking at is how many times people access resources on the VLE, and that's a really difficult thing if you don't have the channels for social learning, for learners to say, hey, I listened to this but I was really unsure about this bit, what did you think? And for those conversations to be alive and opening. And in a way I can understand why things like Facebook and Twitter even, those sorts of very open channels are good channels for learning, because learners can get so much from them. And it's kind of so familiar as well, so it doesn't have that kind of. I often say to lecturers when they ask me, well, where should I put my stuff? I say, well, poll your students and just ask them, and if they're all using Facebook in the room, then why not stick it on Facebook? Equally, other channels like Snapchat and things like that. Yeah. There's got to be ways. People can use lots of different. They can use what they're already using. Yeah. So don't try and pull them away from something they're already on, and go to where they are. Yeah, absolutely. I met somebody and they said they used Edmodo or something, and they said, I knew it would be a success because all my students were already on Facebook. And I thought, well, if they're already on Facebook, why don't you just use Facebook? It just seemed, and we're always asking people to set up a new account, set up this, come here. And to a certain extent, I think a lot of the time, sometimes that's a vanity project as well, because it's kind of like, why recreate something that's already been done so well with so much investment? Just use the platforms that are out there. Yes. There's a trick around scalability, isn't there? And I think there's a trap around it. And I think that's where VLEs are very compelling for universities, because then they can get those numbers. But I don't think it always complements the learning. And I think you have to go through all the channels that the learners are using already. That's why I love blogs, because actually that might be a blog that they start when they're in secondary school or in FE, and they'll carry on all the way through university, and they might even carry it on when they're in a job. And are there any blogs that you love that you'd like to share as well? Oh, goodness. I do read a lot of blogs, and at the moment I'm really sucked into Medium and all the different quite a nice articles. Aesthetic, isn't it? So, yeah, it is, and it's like a big community blog with lots of different contributors, and I think that's what I'm stuck into at the moment. It's really fascinating. So in terms of getting your ideas out to the greatest number, and therefore perhaps arguably making them more robust as well. So there's an academic from a Canadian university called Dave Cormier, and he talks about rhizomatic learning. And his ideas are all about, whereas you used to publish articles in very elite ivory tower journals, and now actually you've got that old guard versus sort of rock star academics that are on Twitter that are using these channels. I mean, is that idea kind of filtering down in terms of getting your ideas out to as many people as possible, or is it still about perhaps that closed community of whichever area of research that you're dedicated to? Yeah. When I first started at Southampton, my job really was about
talking to educators, and I soon realised that everybody has a dual role, and if you're on a balanced pathway, then you're an educator and a researcher. And in order for us to make our offer as a Russell Group university, really compelling, then we have to expose that research to undergraduates, and we have to make a meaningful relationship between the high-end research and learning, teaching and learning. So I found that a lot of the tools that I'm teaching educators in terms of creating content for the courses, I'm also teaching researchers, and they need to tell really good, engaging stories about their research. And I think that's starting to really come together, and tomorrow at the podcasting event you'll meet as many researchers as educators, and what I mean by that is how people define themselves, because many people have that dual role. But research is still king, and you get your professorship based on your research, not on your teaching and learning. And we really need to get education up there and thought of as highly as research is. And it's starting to happen, mostly because of the event of student fees, things like that. But yeah,
is there anything like the Varkey Foundation Award for Teacher Award, the Global Teacher Award, but for in the higher education sector? So trying to elevate that practice of teaching, as you said.
There are kind of Times Higher Education Teacher of the Year and things like that. And again, there are really good academics who are and educators who are very passionate and very dedicated and do absolutely incredible projects with their students, but they tend to be pockets, and I really need a big sort of strategy across the whole of HE that really brings education right up to date, so it can be as cutting edge as research. Maybe that's my experience at Southampton, because when I talk to colleagues elsewhere, they really are doing that, and education really has that place.
And what I was going to talk about tomorrow as well is, what's the place of podcasting and other mediums to shout about the research you're doing post-Brexit. So, if the pressure's on and all of a sudden, comes to crunch time after the autumn budget and that kind of thing, how do you actually use that to promote the value of what you're doing as well?
It's a really interesting topic at the moment at Southampton. Lots of people are talking about Brexit and the fallout, that we're really feeling. The community at Southampton is drawn from all across Europe, and although they've said they'll underwrite Horizon 2020 funding, and that sounds like a good thing on paper, I think it's only funding that was previously agreed. What we're losing out really is that those conversations, those collaborations, the dialogue, the relationships that have spanned the last sort of 30 years between academics, from this country and Germany and France and Belgium. And I was working with a team of chemists last year, and they really, the work that they've done is only possible, yes, the funding, absolutely, but because of that, the collaborative nature of their projects. And it just feels like they'll all carry on having that conversation, but we won't be able to join that, and we potentially will lose a huge amount by turning inwards. Yeah, it's pretty depressing stuff.
Do you know Dr. Rose Lukin at UCL Knowledge Lab? I was having a conversation with her about a week ago, and these conversations with people within higher education made me really upset, because they always end on this way when I talk about Brexit. But I don't know.
I'm afraid it's not good.
No, we'll have to see.
I was talking to Optoelectronics Society as well last week, and there again, Brexit is the thing that they're all worried about. And there are many American students or PhD students who come to the UK because they know that they can tap into a European knowledge base, and so they'll just sort of fly over us and land in France, and they'll have that conversation there. But academically we're a gateway, and that looks like that's closing.
Okay, we'll have to do this conversation again in 3 years' time probably.
Yeah. I hope I'm proved wrong by it all.
Yeah, me too. And anything that came out of Alt, the event that happened recently?
Yeah, I love Alt. It's such a lovely community of people and like-minded, friends, really. It was interesting when you look across the papers. There's always a theme for the year. There was a lot of talk around analytics and data. Worried me a little bit that we're very vendor centric around education at the moment. They seem to be leading the agenda. I'm not anti, and I really, think the place of learning technologies is absolutely crucial. But I also think scalability suits vendors very much. I like it when people have their own particular kind of DIY methods of doing things or finding things that work locally that don't necessarily scale up.
So mixing and matching rather than just sort of dropping a huge box in.
Yeah, this solution that everybody has and everybody promises, and everybody has. It suits some people and it doesn't suit everybody, and we need to think a bit more about that. But yeah, analytics and data, that was what was being sort of served to us, really.
And you're also going to come to the launch party for the EdTech Podcast launch party.
Yes,
so,
very excited.
Anyone listening, you should come and meet Stephan. And what are you on Twitter as well?
I'm dots and spaces on Twitter, and somebody mentioned I've been on Twitter since 2005, which these days is quite a long time, I realise. Yeah. So I'm an old Twitter.
Early bird.
Yeah, an early bird. There we go. Early adopter.
So yeah, let's go and have our meal, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And finally, in this week's episode, news from welcome sponsors Firefly Learning. So you may know Firefly is an online tool that brings together teachers, students and parents to set homework, track progress, share resources and engage parents. It's used by hundreds of schools worldwide, including Hyams Park School, Hammersmith Academy and the British International School of Cairo. 8 of the top 10 UK independent schools use Firefly, and you can follow the team at Firefly Team and contact Alex McMillan, alex@fireflysolutions.co.uk with any inquiries. Thanks for listening, everyone. Next week we have a really exciting programme with a Kano takeover. We've got their head of education and 3 educators from the States talking about makerspaces, about creativity, coding, cross-curriculum stuff. So make sure you check in for that. And don't forget in the meantime that if you feel so inclined, you can rate and review on whichever channel you're listening to. And otherwise, just have a great week. Thanks. Bye.